Hello and good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good night to some folks who are joining us from various locations around the world. I'm Nicholas Kelly from Delivering Data Analytics Philippines and Delivering Data Analytics US. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because I'm a big proponent of data analysis and working with data, as our company name would suggest. But if you've been following me for any length of time, you also know I'm interested in artificial intelligence. And first and foremost, we are a consulting firm. So we get to see what's going on in the world of analytics and AI and what our clients are demanding and expecting. And in this session today, I'm going to share with you what we're seeing, both in terms of the skills that we're being requested to provide to our clients, but as well as the evolving role and nature of the data analyst. I'm going to be sharing with you what we actually see, not the stuff that's theoretical and conceptual ideas in theory, but what's really happening on the ground. So with that in mind, the format we're going to use today is, if you do have questions, I want to make this more of an interactive session, so more Q&A, more back and forth. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat anytime. So this is live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So if you're having any trouble with either of those platforms, you can switch to the other one. On LinkedIn, we're on Delivering Data Analytics, so you can just search for Delivering Data Analytics page. You'll find us there. Same with YouTube. Delivering Data Analytics, you'll find us there on YouTube Live. Okay, so let's just kick off and get into the topic at hand. And basically, I want to share with you 10 skills today. 10 skills that you can look at and go, okay, I can use this in my day-to-day. If you're a data analyst, okay, what are the skills you can actually start using now? What AI tools, but what are the skills you need to develop? And I think that's more of the question of the day is, if you are a data analyst, what do you need to develop to make sure you're still relevant and that AI doesn't take your role? That fear is there. As well as, if you're a manager or a leader in your organization and you do currently have data analysts, what do you need to be equipping them with so that they are staying cutting edge and also delivering more value? So it's not a question of, do I lose my job or are we going to get rid of people? It's more of a question of, what more can you do with what you have, right? So keep that top of mind. Why am I talking to you today, and who am I to talk to you about any of this stuff? Well, back in the day, it was back in the early 2000s. Well, 1998 is when I started my degree in computer science, and I had the very good fortune to study artificial intelligence with Professor Derek Bridge. And the man is a legend, and he gave me a passion and a love for artificial intelligence. Now, back then, it was obviously a little bit different to what it is today, but the fundamentals are largely the same. So, if you think about LLMs and ChatGPT and all these other things, the foundational theory is all the same. It hasn't really changed much. The scale has changed. That's what's different. Now, back then, I actually started to work in computer games and computer game programming, computer game physics, and artificial intelligence, and that was where I started to first get some experience in AI. Now, from there, I went on and became a senior manager in Deloitte Analytics. That was over in Singapore, where I really started to get into analytics, data visualization specifically, and then moved over to the US. Where we started our own business, where we run Delivering Data Analytics. It is a consulting firm, but we also train organizations and teach people how to do really good data analysis, but also to deliver value to the organization. So we really emphasize that side of the things. I've written 2 books, Delivering Data Analytics, which is very much focused on a deep dive into how do you deliver good business intelligence within your organization. And then more recently released How to Interpret Data. If you are based in the Philippines, you can get it in fully booked. It is a bestseller in the professional books. So you can grab your copy there if they're not currently sold out. If they are sold out, just make a reservation. I'm also working on my 3rd book, The AI Enhanced Data Team, which is largely going to be the topic of what we're talking about today. Cool. Okay, so let's just jump into it. Let's quickly define what is a data analyst and what is a data scientist. I'm telling you this for good reason. So let's start with the data analyst. So data analysts gather, cleanse, analyze historical data, and uncover business insights. They tell us what happened and why it happened. It's more like when you think about this, my own perspective on this is I think of it as it's really good business intelligence. Right, so we're delivering that intelligence to the business, but they differentiate themselves a little bit with data science. So data scientists utilize advanced machine learning algorithms like neural networks to identify future trends, predict outcomes, and prescribe solutions. So there's some differences there, right? Now, what I want to propose is there can be a blurring of the lines here, and with AI, you're going to be able to see more of this example and this possibility of the data analyst doing more. Right. So when I talked about it at the start, it's not about cutting costs, reducing your team. It is keeping your current team and doing more with your current team. Okay, so a few things we need to get out of the way first, right? So how does AI affect the role of the data analyst? We just talked about it starts blending into data science. So let's look at some high-level categories for how we can look at this. Firstly, in the realm of data science, you can predict. You can do things that are forward-looking, right? Classical machine learning, AI models, right? All the classical stuff. This is the stuff that was traditionally the realm of the data scientist. And that is now, with the help of AI, becoming the possible realm of the data analyst. And I'm going to give you an example in a little while of what that looked like, because we've done this on a couple of our projects. There's the ability to create things with AI, right? So not just the traditional AI role in data science, but also the things we're most familiar with these days and how people think about AI is large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, right? The various models that are out there. And those are helping us write better code, also create content in general. And then finally, we have the agentic AI, the part of AI that's allowing us to act. More of a recent development in the last year in the world of AI, but it is the creation of autonomous agents. And this is really a significant game changer for the data analyst, and where we are recommending the data analyst starts to upskill themselves, retool themselves, and equipping themselves with all of these tools and the potential to use them. One of the interesting facts about the Philippines is that a very large proportion of the workforce in the Philippines is already using ChatGPT or lookalikes to ChatGPT. It's already happening. It's already happening in the middle part, the create part. It's not really happening on the parts around the edges yet, but that's okay because that's going to come. That will get there in time. So, good news for the Philippines. There's other data out there that's suggesting CEOs in the Philippines are aware that they need to start using AI and ChatGPT and large language models, but they are largely unaware that their teams are already using it. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It can be obviously a very risky thing. So we want to get all that out in the light. We want to equip people with the tools and skills they need to be able to doing this within part of a wider strategy of the organization and using AI. So there has to be some sort of deliberate rollout. But the thing is, and certainly what we're noticing in the Philippines, also in the US, is that there is a desire to get all your data perfect and have a centralized data warehouse or a fabric framework or structure around your data. That's all good. It's all really great stuff. But if you wait for that to happen, you're potentially waiting for quite a long time before you can start to take advantage of some of the more recent advancements in AI, certainly in agentic AI. So good, have that going. And at the same time, in parallel, you need to start looking at your teams and how you're going to start upskilling your teams. And if you are a data analyst, you need to start looking at how you're going to equip yourself in this modern era for the next gen data analyst. So let's talk a little bit about an example that we had. I want to share a little bit of a story. So we have a fairly large client in the US, and as part of our team, we have a traditional data analyst that fits the description I gave a few minutes ago of what a data analyst does. They're collecting the data, they're gathering it, they're cleaning it up, they're making sure the quality is good, and then they're doing some analysis on it. They're interpreting that analysis and they're delivering it to the client. All good stuff. About 6 months ago, we started to see if we could retool this analyst and get them doing more of that first column I showed you, the predict work. Can they do more of the predict? So we wanted to see, could we do more of this on the left? Could we take someone with that background and make them do data science or support them in doing data science? We put them through a roughly 2 to 3 week program, and we had done all our research on all the latest tools, what makes sense in using AI and different frameworks and structures and approaches, and how can we take someone with an existing data analyst background and make them do data science work, or enable them or support them to do data science work. Now, I'm not saying this is a replacement for a data scientist. It was a test to see if we could do it, and I will say it was largely successful. The challenge is you can only do so much in a couple of weeks of training, right? So you can't get super deep into all the various models, but you can get someone who has a background in data, pretty good and pretty dangerous in being able to do some data science work. So they ended up doing a forecasting model for our client, and it went very well. The client was delighted. The client was actually anticipating that they would need to go hire a data scientist. And we said, hey, hang on a sec. Let's try this first. And having done a lot of data science projects in the past and being the one ultimately pricing that work, 10 years ago, that's kind of the stuff that we had this data analyst do over a course of a few weeks would have taken a team of data scientists months. And they were able to achieve it with the support of various AI tools in weeks. Now, this required a few things of our data analysts, right? They had to get good at using Python, which they weren't really exposed to. So most of the work was done in Python, but they had the support of some large language models to help write the code, some other AI tools to help them verify what they're doing is all correct and is all above board, and a very tight connection with the client. And so that's one thing that we're noticing is with more use of AI, It's actually necessitating a closer connection with the client. And you're going to see in the top 10 skills that I'm recommending towards the end of this session, a lot of them are going to be human focused, customer focused, or client focused. So it was successful. It went well. Hence this top 10 skills, right? So this actually worked. The process of training and upskilling an existing data analyst to do some data science work was successful. But that's not the only thing you can have AI help you to do. There, you can get help with data engineering. You can get help with dashboard design or data visualization, requirements gathering. There's so many things you can do. So let's look at what makes a good data analyst without AI. Okay, just what makes a really good data analyst right now, right? Or maybe 1 year ago or 2 years ago. When we train our teams, we make sure they're following this process and this framework. It requires a complete mindset change. You have to have a different mindset. You have to view anything that you're doing with your customers. And quite often I will say stakeholders and I'll say end users, but we want our teams to be thinking in terms of customers. We want them to think, I am delivering something of value, a data product to my customers. And when you think that way, and when you have your teams think that way, you start to look at, well, what's valuable about what I'm doing? Why will people use it? Or why will people buy it, right? So there has to be inherent value in it. So when you take a product mindset approach, it changes how you're going to do everything. So firstly, there's you and your team, and you have some foundational skills, right? So in this case, you have the skills of a data analyst, and probably a lot of it's technical, right? But some of it's going to be around people skills. You're developing products. Now, your products could be a wide range of things, right? But you need to be thinking in terms of what are you producing isn't, let's say, a data story for your customer, or it's not a dashboard for your customer. You're creating a product. A product has to have some value to it, right? So we're broadly saying, okay, so there's some decision intelligence because you're a data analyst. You're providing a product that's going to help with decision making ultimately. Now, since we have a market and we're looking at this from a product mindset, we also have to look at what's the demand from the market. What does the market actually need? What are they asking for? Because it's pointless delivering something they're not actually asking for. And you can break that down into two ways. They're asking for it and they might be right, and they're asking for it and they might be wrong. Maybe that's the wrong thing they're asking for. So as the data analyst, you have to be trying to interpret that correctly, because what they say might actually not be what they need. And you end up building something that doesn't get used at the end of the day. So ultimately, what your job is delivering value to your market. Okay, we have to deliver value to the market. You should be doing this as a data analyst already. Like, none of this requires AI. Well, what AI is going to do is it's going to greatly enhance all of this, right? So if you get any of this stuff wrong, you're not going to be successful. Any one of these areas, if you're not appropriately skilled, you might notice people, your customers, maybe they don't use the stuff you're creating. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe there's too much negative feedback. There could be any number of reasons, right? But ultimately, it's going to come down to this grid, to this set of, it's effectively a scorecard in how you're doing. Now, another way to look at this is, and excuse that it is rather verbose and extensive, but if you look at a competency matrix for a data analyst, and we'll share this with everyone who's attending, right? So we'll email this out. Don't feel you need to take notes. We'll send you the slides. Think of the things that a typical data analyst has to do. We look at it like three broad categories, three broad buckets. So there's engineering and there's automation, but it's generally foundational. Let's look at a few of those. So data ingestion, right? So you're gathering your data, you need to bring it in. If you look at, you're probably doing some sort of SQL. You might be doing Python or R, maybe not, depends on your role. You have to have some understanding of cloud architecture, depending on your role again, data ops, continuous integration, continuous deployment, streaming. Okay, there's all sorts of stuff, right? data quality, data lineage, right? So you might be looking at this and thinking, well, that's a lot, but if you can look at this in terms of this might be you within a team, and your team should have all these skills. Certainly in a modern data team, these skills need to exist. Whether or not the individual data analyst has them all is debatable. Then on the decision intelligence, so we have EDA, that's exploratory data analysis. That's like 101 for a data analyst. They have to be good at that, testing their hypotheses. Some data analysts may or may not have some sort of statistical and ML background. Being able to do experiments, do various things around forecasting scenarios. You might think, well, that's kind of a data scientist work. It is getting into the realm of data analysis. What if sensitivity analysis? There's a bunch of things you can look at. Moving over to insight, product, and experience. We always ensure that if you're working in data analysis, you have to know user experience and user interface design. You have to know it. It's 101 for a data analyst. You're going to be working with the business, right? So you have to understand how to deliver a good user experience. Of course, you have to know data visualization best practices, KPI design, prototyping, some of these other things. When we send you this deck afterwards, see if you can score yourself and your team on how good you are at these. Like when you add them all up, give yourself a 1 to 10 on each of these boxes, and then add up the totals at the bottom and just see where you land. Now, the thing is, AI can do all of these things, either to some small degree or entirely replace. Which is like, for me, like as someone who has a background in data visualization, I'm like, well, I can push back on some of this, like where I could say it's not going to entirely replace data visualization best practices. It certainly can replace the theory. But some parts of this, like when I worked on a project years ago, one of the feedback I got from a stakeholder customer was that, Nick, you didn't use any pie charts in my dashboard. And well, using pie charts isn't the best practice, right? But he wasn't going to use it if it didn't have pie charts. So that's where this kind of human aspect is going to come into it. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you next is, okay, you need to become very upskilled and understanding the tools that are out there. And I see we have a question from Esther asking actually about this. What AI tools are popular right now? I'm going to show some examples later on of a couple of tools, but just to shout them out right now. We're tool agnostic, and the tools I generally recommend, I try to stick with open source as much as possible. But N8N is one that's being used quite a lot. It is an AI agent orchestration tool, and I'll show you an example of that one later on, Esther. But the idea would be that you're going to start using tools that maybe you haven't traditionally used, right, to cover some of this stuff. So the stuff that you're seeing in all the orange here, to greater and lesser extents, these are going to be supported or greatly enhanced by AI. So what the question is for you as a data analyst is, which skills and which areas do you want to maybe extend into? So that example I gave you where that data analyst extended more into the data science realm, right? So they got more into forecasting, scenarios, simulations, machine learning, doing some basic regressions, right, to forecast sales in the future. That's something that they wanted to get into. So we were able to put them on a training track that would get them into that sort of frame of, okay, well, what tools do you need specifically to extend your skills into that realm? So yeah, and then there's other tools like Airtable. I'll get into those. I'll talk about those. But thank you for that question. And folks, feel free to keep them coming. I can answer them as we go. So what skills do we need? Do I suggest you get? And the thing is, if you start replacing everything with AI and you start getting all the latest tools, right, and you forget that you need to bring people on a journey, it's really risky. So we had a couple of experiences with this where both on our side, like we were working with our clients and using more AI. And also on the client side, we were training their teams how to use more AI and AI agents. Um, One of the things that came out as a risk was that it dropped the actual human engagement. The customers, those folks that are the most important part of the whole analytics experience and journey, is they were being left out, right? So while you can use AI to do, let's say, like persona design, right? So I'm designing for these customers, it's a HR manager, what things do they need to care about? What we found is when we traditionally do that work, we actually go sit down with people and have a conversation and understand, hey, what's your Monday morning like? What's going on? What's on your mind? What are you struggling with at work right now? How can we help? So that's getting lost, or that can have the potential to get lost. And it's very risky because one of the things that we end up emphasizing a lot is the importance of change management. And so when you're bringing in new data, new findings, and you have the potential to transform the organization, you're introducing massive change. You're introducing wholesale change. It's very big, right? So one of the things we have to be very careful about is when we're introducing this kind of change with data, that we're also making sure we're doing even more focus on change management and even more focus on people. So that's the risk, right? So if anything, as a data analyst, you're going to need to start focusing more on your people skills, your ability to engage with the business and understand what they need, because you're going to be able to, even if you don't change anything about what you do in your technical competence and you start to use AI to enhance what you're doing, you're going to end up having a whole lot of spare time. You're going to be able to do things way more effectively, much faster. So you're going to have the time to actually work with people more, and you're going to need to do that. That's going to be one of your differentiators in the future, is your ability to engage and understand the business even more. So I know we have a couple of questions coming up here. Okay, so Para, so you're asking, what's one AI tool or automation every entry-level analyst should master? If it's a tool, I'll go with Paris. There's a reason why I said N8N, right? Like that one is just it's one of these completely new foundational tools you have to have. You're doing anything with AI, you need orchestration. So N8N, I'm saying N8N because it's open source. You can download it; it's free, right? They also have a hosted version that you can pay for. So I would recommend N8N. So it's the number N, the letter N, the number 8, and then the letter N. You can just search it into Google, you'll get it. So or any other orchestration tool, but I recommend that one because it's open source. So basically what that does, and I've got an example later on, but basically what it does is it allows you to think of like a tool like Zapier, right, which was still is a great automation tool. But let's say you could take a workflow. I'll give an example. Let's say you're a HR recruiter, and a big part of your job is going screening candidates and doing research and figuring out what skills are most in demand, what you should chart, or what's the going rate, what are their salaries, all of those things. So you could set up in an orchestration tool. You could say, okay, step 1, go to LinkedIn and gather a pile of job posts that are similar to the one we're looking for. Great. Now put that into ChatGPT and look for the skills or roles that we're looking for, and determine what is what salary we should be paying to be competitive. Right. Then maybe the next step is, okay, go put this into our Teams or Slack, and post that insight in there. So Monday morning, all HR managers or recruiters are looking at that. It can go on and on, right? You can have this whole range of things that can be going on. Then you can do some analysis, right? You can build a model within that whole loop in your orchestration layer, right? And the model's going to go do something, right? And it can do some analysis, and then it can put that analysis into some sort of output, like in Google Sheets, and then you could take that and that goes into some other tool. So to directly answer your question, Paris, N8N is the tool is that you should be looking at. Uh, you can plug in Python. It's got its own models. It does. You can plug in like another tool I'll throw out there is Airtable, but you pay for that one. But we're seeing that being used quite a lot. So uh, let's say on a simple level, it might be okay. We're going to pull in 5 different data sources. We're going to do some basic modeling on it and come out with some sort of analysis. It's really good for data analysts to do this like quick ad hoc work. In lieu of having a very well unified architected data structure, data strategy, data governance within your organization, right? That there are things you can start doing right now that you don't have to wait for that. So we actually have a client who onboarded a new chief analytics officer, and which is great. You need it. You need the organizational structure around analytics. But the flip side is his goal is somewhat legacy thinking in that he wants to get the data architecture perfect before doing anything with AI, which is it's totally understandable, but it's going to take a year. So what's going to happen, right? Their competitors are going to start doing all this stuff around the fringes and optimizing operations where possible until good governance is in place. That's going to greatly accelerate them already. So that's the risk, right? Don't wait for everything to be perfect. So Paris, that's a great question. Well, I'll just take a couple more questions while we're here on the topic. Is it worth? Yes. So Esther is it worth learning specific tools right now if things are changing so fast? Yes, 100%. Great question. Things are changing very, very fast, like ridiculously fast. But some of those foundational things, like orchestration, is here to stay, right? So there's basic concepts that you need to get on board with, right? That you just have to accept. That's how things are now. So orchestration is definitely one of those. Thank you for that question. Okay, let's jump back into it. So we need to bring people on a journey, right? So that's one of the big takeaways I want you to have from this session. So some other things to keep in mind. So what are the 10 skills, right? So you came here for learning what are the 10 skills the data analyst needs to learn. These are the ones on the right? So let's assume everything on the left is within the reach of AI to varying degrees. These are things that you can use as a typical data analyst. The skills in orange on the left side are sort of like table stakes. You should be able to do these anyway. Not all of them, right? Some of them you're not going to be doing as a data analyst. But now with AI, you can do all of those ones in the orange. Some things you need to change, right? So here are the 10 skills you should have as a data analyst going forward. Consultant mindset. You 100% have to have a consultant mindset. And this goes back to the customer product perspective. You have to be viewing, even though they're going to be internal, right? They're going to be people that you work with, colleagues you work with. You have to view them as a customer. This requires the mindset of being a consultant. If you're thinking like a consultant, you're also thinking like, hey, they're going to measure me on my performance. What value am I bringing to this organization, to this customer, right? So you have to be thinking that it's a consultant mindset you need to have. The next thing we need to look at is the level of customer interaction you're going to be having. So when we train our analysts, they're always trained on how to run requirements gathering sessions, how to run workshops, how to run a good interview, right? So these basic interactions that you have to have with people to understand what's really going on. So in my second book, I wrote about one of the ways you can do this is asking the 5 whys. And you can check my LinkedIn profile. I did a post on this a while ago. The 5 whys technique is a great technique that you should learn as a data analyst. If you don't already know it, is to keep asking why until you get down to the real truth. It was a process that was created by the founder of Toyota in their manufacturing process. Is asking the 5 whys gets you down to ideally the root cause, and then you go solve for the root cause. So quite often what happens in business is that we end up with like okay, I'm going to go answer this question because the business wants it answered. But it's actually at a very surface level. What we should do is trying to get deep down as we can with the people side of it and understand what's the real driver of what's going on, and then go solve for that. Go query our data or work with the data to try and answer what's going on with that. So that's one technique, right? So you need to get really good at customer interaction. App development. So, like, what's app development? I think this is one of the biggest changes you're going to have as a data analyst. You have to get really comfortable developing apps. Now, what's an app in this case, right? So, you might be thinking software and things like that. Well, it is software, but with the modern AI tools now, you don't have to actually write code. There are no code or low code AI solutions now that you can use. And why would you use them? Well, you can integrate your systems, you can integrate data, you can do so many things with it now and not have to wait. So we had one of our analysts was waiting on a client in the IT organization to build a view and connect two different data sources before they could do analysis. And kind of legacy company, taking them a while to do it, not really doing it. It's a fairly trivial task. So we had the analyst just go, okay, look, use a tool to connect the systems real quick, and some minor customizations, right, that they had to do, but it was all no code. So the analyst did that and was able to then get the data that they needed to start doing the analysis on it, right? So we're really only scratching the surface with what's possible here with the tooling. But for the data analyst, building low code or no code tools to get to the data that you need to is a big upskill, right, that you're going to have. You mightn't think of yourself as a software developer. The tools have come so far. So I would suggest putting in the realm of possibility for something that you should start looking at. Let me just take this question. Niharika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Any soft skills you want to recommend that help a fresher getting a job as a data analyst easily? You know, we've been hiring recently, and one of the things that we are looking at is, like, if they don't mention they use AI anywhere, they're not getting hired, right? So that's thing number one, right? So it's like we're looking for that, but we're also looking for the modern AI tools. So have they gone to the effort of understanding, like, what are the latest AI tools that are out there to enhance their role? So, let's say, for example, as a data analyst, right? If we're hiring for a data analyst role, I want to make sure that they're upskilling their soft skills. So just like you're saying, like these soft skills in the AI stuff should be a given. We should see it in their resume. That's like, they're using AI to do these various things. Great. So we don't expect they're going to be spending all day manually looking at data quality. They should be using some sort of tooling to do that. On the soft skills side, to get to your question, what we're looking for, and I think what data analysts should be looking for, is, let's get to it. It's item number 4 on this list. I've called it behavioral economics, but it's basically the whole point of doing analysis, which is to change behavior, to change the behavior of people in the organization so that they are making decisions that is driving a return on investment, delivering value, basically. So what I would like to see as a soft skill is understanding how to influence decision making. I want to see that. The chapter, I think 12 or 13 in my second book is all about that, right? So it's like, how do you ensure that all the work you've done, the hard work you've done, all your training, all your work in data is actually going to move the needle, right? So that's what I would love to see for a new data analyst, is a heavy focus and emphasis on that specific soft skill, the ability to understand how they can influence behavioral outcomes, because that's all it comes down to, right? Now, a part of that, you could say a stepping stone to get there, would be data storytelling. So we need to see that. That's like table stakes for a data analyst. But the reason I haven't put that in, like, AI, what AI can do, is you need it to be that human interaction, right? We talked about that journey and that story you have to have with people. You have to bring them on a journey, and part of that is data storytelling. I always say this, right? Like, data storytelling gets a lot of emphasis. It's important. Great. There is the bigger story. There is the bigger data story. There is the story of people around data. As the data analyst, you play a key role in bringing people on that journey. So another soft skill I really want to see is change management, change orchestration. The ability to understand that you're introducing change with data, you're going to have to know how to manage that because no one else does, right? Unless you have like change professionals in your organizations, which some organizations do. But if you don't, and you don't have that skill in the organization, all of your work may not have the full impact it could potentially have. So I would say those two skills. It's a great question. Okay. Let's flick on there. I know we have a few more questions, folks, and I'll get to them in a sec. So we talked about a bit about the change orchestration piece. So decision coaching and influence. So that's like you've delivered your insight. Let's say you did a presentation, right? This is usually where things end for most data analysts. You do your presentation and you're like, great, I did a good job doing the data storytelling. Seemed to be well received, and then nothing happens. There's no change. No one's doing anything based off your recommendations. Nothing's actually really happened, right? That's where this piece comes in, decision coaching and influence. And this stuff is nuanced, right? Like this stuff's hard. As a data analyst, right, as one person, how do you start to shift the mindsets of other people to start acting on data, right? So many organizations end up going, okay, we need to work with data, we need to use AI, we need to do all these things. But they're not actually really willing to change. And that's hard. So this is one of the hardest things, hardest soft skills for you to develop is how can you start coaching people to start making decisions with data? Let's say you don't have the top-down buy-in from your organization, right? Let's say culturally your organization isn't there. Do you just stop and kind of throw your hands in the air and say, well, no, you can't do that. If you do that, maybe your tenure at the company is going to be limited, right? You can be using AI, and that's great, and that's going to save you, right, a degree, right, where your ability to do more with less. But if it's not actually moving the needle, right, you're just doing more stuff that's not influencing the decision in your organizations, right? So that's like kind of the flip side of using AI. You're going to become more productive, do more, but you're actually not really moving the needle for the business still, right? And that requires a human interaction. So that's one of these areas, right? So can you start to look at yourself as someone who can help? There's that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, by Dale Carnegie, I think. Brilliant book. Like read that book just for this little section alone. Decision coaching and influence. How do you influence people? I talk about it a bit in my second book, but you should really get expert at this, right? It's like the ability to bring people on that journey and get them involved in making decisions using your data, using your insights. Cool. Okay, so a couple of other things, right? So ROI measurement. If you're doing stuff and people aren't actually hearing that it's having an impact in the organization, right? So it's like, what is it that you're doing? How are you measuring the behavioral impact of that? But how is it affecting the bottom line of the business? If you can measure that, you're going to make it so much easier for you to do more work in the future, right? So that you can say, hey, well, 2 months ago, I saved the company $200,000, or let's say 5 million pesos, or whatever it is, right? That they're going to be more open and more amenable to you doing other work, or maybe work that's more interesting to you. So that's also going to change. Remember when we talked about this product mindset, right? That you need to understand your market, your customers, all of these things. If you know going into a project that you're going to be measuring the outcomes of it and the ROI on it, you're going to be very hyper aware of how you're going to do that and how you're going to set yourself up for success to be able to do that. So that's one thing you're going to have to see, like measuring yourself, the ability to do that. And then finally, the data culture piece. I think we kind of covered that like to a degree, but it's hard to shift culture by yourself without a top-down mandate. If you're a manager, you could do it with your own group, maybe with your own department. The ideal situation is you're doing a top-down, bottoms-up approach where you have uh, senior leadership buy-in. They want to do it, but you also start having champions and um, various influencers within the organization shifting the data culture. But you should become an advocate of evolving the data culture, right? You should be the one that's like singing this hymn every day. Right? It's like, and not in a negative way, not in a like a kind of burnt out kind of way, like a just energetic kind of like, let's start doing this, let's use data. You can start to do it in like every meeting you have. Practice what you preach. Bring data to every single meeting you have. Hey, I saw this statistic on da 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 da, right? Like, just make it part and parcel of every interaction people have with you, right? So you can start doing that bit by bit. Folks, I know we're kind of getting near the end of time here. I do want to show you some examples, but also let me answer a few more questions. Okay, Esther, do I still need to learn data science fundamentals, or can AI do it for me? Yeah, you know what? We had when we did that story I shared. We did train the fundamentals of data science on the models that we were going to have them build. So we had them do some. They ended up using this model called Profit, which was developed by Facebook. It is a way of forecasting sales when there's quite a bit of seasonality involved. Yes, it is important. It is important that they know the fundamentals. They really need to know the fundamentals. However, they didn't need to know all the exact libraries they would need in Python in order to do that, right? So we had them use two different LLMs to write the code that would do that. And basically, you play each LLM off each other, one to write the code, one to validate, test, criticize, right, until you get to a good code base. But yes, they needed to know the fundamentals. But the nuance, how to actually exactly implement that in Python, we didn't spend, like a year training them on all of the details they need to know on Python to do that. But great question, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it opens a wider question as well. Like, should you be learning foundational things if AI can do it? Yes, you should be learning foundational things. What happens if AI doesn't work? What happens if your internet's out? What happens if AI takes over, right? And we're left to our own devices. There's many what ifs. You could almost liken it to, remember when GPS came around and we all stopped using maps? We would just follow Google Maps or Waze or whatever you use to get somewhere. We kind of like forget how to do it normally now, right? So then when you don't have GPS or you don't have your phone, it's kind of hard to get around places. It almost seems barbaric to pull out an old school map and plan out your route. You could say the same thing happened with cell phones, right? We all used to remember our friends and family's phone numbers, and now we've forgotten them. Right, because we don't exercise that muscle. So I would advocate always learn the fundamentals no matter what you're doing. Don't expect AI to always be there when you need it exactly in the moment. Also, it's like it looks really bad if someone asks you, okay, well, tell me about the profit model and how that works. And it's PROPHET. It's not profit as in PROFIT. Minor, but basically, the analyst should know what they did, right? And they should know why they did it and why that model. Cool. Okay. Great question, though. Let's just go down. Okay, so let's see. I do want to wrap it up, folks. So, like, if you do have more questions, just pop them in the chat as well. I know I have a few more to get through. But since some of these questions are kind of tool oriented, Paris, I know you have another question there, like which tools, which AI related skills or tools do entry level analysts actually get hired for right now? That is a great question. You know what? For me, it's all people skills and soft skills. Because of AI, we can train you on the AI stuff. I don't care. All completely trainable. I don't care. What I care about is your ability to interact with the business, because AI is not really going to help you a whole lot there. It can help you a bit, but not a whole lot. So yeah, to answer your question, but here's an example. So I wanted to show you an example of like a kind of end-to-end pipeline using various AI tools. This one's probably using like four or five. So this was orchestrated using N8N, but you don't see any of that here, right? So basically, the analyst had been tasked with building some insights for a set of executives, right? And so the tools are basically going off researching those executives. So who are they? What do they care about? And then what should they care about? So it's kind of doing like the persona design, the persona work there, understanding who they are, what their goals are, what they need. And then it's pulling data from internal and external systems and then presenting it to them daily, customized and tailored to their role. So the COO is getting a certain take on this. It's all the same data. They're getting a certain take on it. The COO is getting a different take. CFO different, right? So it's all the same data, but it's being presented slightly differently. And this stuff gets you thinking is like, okay, well, is this the end of dashboards? Well, no. It's more of an and situation. It's not like replacement of dashboards, but it's a different interface. It's a different way of presenting the data to people, and so it's like we shouldn't say no to this just because it's like a different tool. It's like I largely built my career on dashboards, but I built my career on dashboards because it is one of the main interfaces to present data, right? But I'm not wedded to dashboards because there are other ways to do it. What if you got like in the morning, a behavioral nudge in Teams? Hey, you should quickly call so and so to talk about the latest findings we had in our sales report. Oh, here's their number, right? So it's just like, okay, click, calling them. That's a behavioral nudge. Remember when we talked about that example where like behavioral influence and trying to navigate different types of suggestions and behaviors like behavioral nudges? That's an example of that. We don't always have to have the interface being a dashboard, right? It can be other things. It doesn't have to be slides, right? You don't have to present it necessarily. There can be other ways of doing behavioral nudges. Indeed, I'd argue a dashboard is quite a hard way to do a behavioral nudge, as well as presenting findings in a meeting, right? What you want is to present behavioral nudges in the moment where they need to make a decision or when they're available to make a decision. So a great example of that is like, let's say in advertising, let's say, so you might get texts or SMS messages with different promotions, right? And so, for example, we did work years ago where it was basically advertising to go to various restaurants, different stores to buy different products. Okay. So what if you got a text? You're in the middle of a meeting, right, at like 3 p.m. in the day, and the text is, hey, you can get 50% off if you drop by here. Go to this store, go to this restaurant. It's like you don't even read it, right? And probably disregard it. Versus, it's the end of the day, you're hungry, it's dinner time, you're about to leave from work. Right before you get in your car, or when you get in your car, you get a text saying, hey, why don't you drop over this restaurant on your way home? Here's a 50% off coupon. You're way more likely to use it. You might not use it, but you're way more likely to use it, right? That's a behavioral nudge. That's what we need to be doing as data analysts. We need to be looking at things and like, how can we nudge behavior and influence the decision making to the best of our ability? These tools are going to help you to be able to do that. I want to show you one more, which is an example of N8N. And this is sort of like what orchestration looks like. So when you start orchestrating all the various functions, and like this is arbitrary, folks. I'm just giving you this as an example of like what it sort of looks like, right? So for example, you get some data from somewhere. Maybe it's a CSV, some sort of file. Let me make this bigger. And then you pass that off to generate some additional content or right? Some sort of bot or generative AI large language model. In this case, we're using Gemini and doing some other things, some modeling, giving it some other inputs. We're formatting the output of that. And this, in this case, is getting posted to X, it's getting posted to LinkedIn, but you can imagine that to internal systems. You can see another workflow here where it's using some sort of trigger, some sort of event, and then it's getting data, it's parsing that data, it's doing some very, very basic filtering, and you could potentially do whatever you want. You could do some modeling, like whatever. It's going into ChatGPT, OpenAI. It's being output into an Excel, and then it's being posted into a Slack channel. Right? No mention of a dashboard here. Right? It's all going where the user is. Where is the user right now? In some cases, the user is going to be in a dashboard, in which case that's a great place to surface the insights. In some cases, maybe they're just on their phone all day. Okay, we need to meet the user where they're at, right? So all of this orchestration allows us to start to be able to do that. It puts it in the realm of the data analyst. You don't have to engage a software developer. You don't need like a big, massive IT team. What you can do now is a lot more, especially on the side of getting people to actually act on the data that you're working on. Okay, cool. So we've only got a few minutes left, and let me look at some of the other questions we have. Esther with should I still learn to code in Python? You know what? I taught Python to elementary kids this year. More out of like, it's a passion, and also our kids are in elementary, and so like they were attending. Look, for me, and I'm biased, I'm totally biased. I love programming. It's enjoyable. And one of the great things you can do in life, like that's fulfilling, is like create stuff. Programming is one way to do it. So I would say as a data analyst, yes, you should. I kind of think everyone should, but as a data analyst, I think you need some sort of skills in Python and just programming in general, understanding programming principles. If you think about it, right, like our future is going to largely involve AI and machines, right? We need to know how to program those. So I think it's a foundational skill. Even though you can get AI to write Python code for you, I think you should know how to read that code. You don't have to get super deep into it, but you should know how it works. So at least foundationally. So yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, I'm gonna take two more because I know we're kind of out of time here. So let's jump in here. Paras, you're asking, if I'm starting my data analytics career in 2025, how do I stay ahead of others who are just learning Excel and SQL? Hey, Excel actually has a really good integration now with OpenAI and of course Copilot. You can do a ton in Excel. You can do really a ton of cool stuff in Excel now with that. If you haven't heard of him, there's a gentleman called David Langer, David, then Langer, and he's a Microsoft MVP because he's a staunch supporter of using Excel. It is like the most used BI tool in the world by some margin, and now it's AI enhanced. So Paris, maybe not exactly the answer you're looking for, but like I would say, yeah, you need to be good at Excel, but you can use Copilot now. But for me, if I'm hiring data analysts, if our clients are hiring data analysts, and if they're asking me for the skills, there's going to be two sides to this. There's the soft skills, have to have them. They're like you just have to have good people skills now because AI is enabling your teams to do more, right? So it's harder for the people that like to be like, I'm just going to go in a corner and do my programming and build my models. It's going to be harder for those folks to be successful because the folks that are super extroverted are now getting the skills where they can do some of this more technical stuff. So I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for soft skills, and I'm looking for how are you equipping and enabling yourself in AI? How are you going to save me time? Basically, I don't want to. I don't want you sitting down writing SQL for 8 hours a day. I want you looking using various models to write your SQL in 1/10 of the time, and then do other stuff. Do other stuff that's going to enhance what we're doing in the organization. I want you very focused on value. How you're going to reduce costs in an organization. How are you going to increase revenue in the organization? There. If you're thinking that way, that's a really good sign. That's a very good indicator. Cool. I think we're good. I think I got to all the questions. So everyone, thanks for joining. Appreciate it. This will be made available for download and on YouTube, and we'll send you along. If you registered, we have your details. We'll send you along the deck, and if you do want to reach out, just let us know. So there's a few things to be aware of if you are in the Philippines and you are interested in doing some more with us. So we are starting a training program in the Philippines at some point in the future. If you want to be updated on that, just follow our Delivering Data Analytics Philippines page on LinkedIn. It'll be posted there. You can also follow us on our socials. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. Or contact us directly. Reach out to me if you want directly. It's all good. So some of the contact details here. deliveringdataanalytics.com/PH is our website for the Philippines. LinkedIn and Facebook. You can find us there. So we are finishing on time, precisely on time. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your questions. Reach out if you want to touch base with us and stay connected. Thank you all for your time.